There is one principle, Athenians, which I hold to through everything, and that is the principle of no concessions to the Spartans. I know that the spirit which inspires men while they are being persuaded to make war is not always retained in action, that as circumstances change, resolutions change too. Yet I see that now as before, the same, almost literally the same counsel is demanded of me, and I want to challenge those of you who are allowing yourselves to be persuaded by the Spartans to support the national resolve, even in the case of setbacks, or you cannot claim credit in the event of success. For sometimes the course of things is as arbitrary as the plans of man. Indeed, this is why we usually blame chance for whatever does not happen as we expected. Now, it was clear before that Sparta plotted against us. It is even more clear now. The treaty provides that we shall mutually submit our differences to legal arbitration, and that we shall meanwhile keep what we have. Yet the Spartans never yet made us any offer of arbitration, and have not accepted such offers from us. On the contrary, they wish this to be settled by war instead of by negotiation. And now we find them here, skipping the requests and instead issuing demands. They order us to abandon the siege of Potidæa and let Aegina be independent, and to revoke the Megarian decree. And now they conclude with an ultimatum warning us to leave the Greeks independent. I hope that none of you will think that we would be going to war for small matter if we refuse to revoke the Megarian decree, which is their main complaint, and the revocation of which would keep the peace. Do not let any feeling of guilt linger in your minds as if you went to war for a small matter. This small matter contains the whole seal and trial of your resolution. If you give way, you will instantly have to meet some new demand, as having been frightened into obedience in the first instance, while a firm refusal will make them clearly understand that they must treat you more as equals. Make your decision, therefore, at once. Either act as they order you to before you are harmed, or, if we are to go to war, which I for one think we should, do so without caring whether the cost be great or small, and without making concessions or consenting to a precarious hold of our possessions. For all demands pressed on a neighbor as commands before any attempt at legal settlement, be they great or be they small, have only one meaning, and that is slavery. Now, as to the war, and the resources available to each side, a detailed comparison will not show you the inferiority of Athens. Personally engaged in the cultivation of their land, without funds, either private or public, the Peloponnesians are farmers, without experience in long wars overseas. Their own poverty has always limited their conflicts with one another to short local attacks. A power like this is not capable of manning a fleet or frequently sending out armies. They cannot afford to be away from home, and besides, they have no command of the sea. Capital, it must be remembered, sustains a war more than forced contributions. Farmers are a class of men that are always more ready to serve in person rather than contributing their own funds. They are more confident that their bodies will survive the dangers of war compared to their funds, especially if the war lasts longer than they expect, which it almost certainly will. In a single battle, the Spartans and their allies may in principle be able to withstand the whole of Greece. but they are incapable of sustaining a war against a power whose character differs so fundamentally from their own. They lack a single unified council, which is needed for prompt and vigorous action. And furthermore, because every member of their league holds an equal vote, each pursues their own narrow interests, a situation that results in total inertia. The great wish of some of the members of their league is to get revenge on some particular enemy, while the great wish of the others is to not risk their own property. They rarely even assemble, but when they do, they only dedicate a very small fraction of the time to the consideration of any unified objective or goal, spending the rest of their time on their own private interests. Meanwhile, each member assumes that no harm will come of their neglect, believing it is the business of somebody else to look out for the future on their behalf. And so, because they all share in the same delusion, the common cause imperceptibly decays. But the main point is the hindrance that they will experience from the lack of money. The slowness with which they earn it will cause delay, but the opportunities of war wait for no one. Again, we need not be alarmed either at the possibility of them raising fortifications in Attica or at their navy. It would be difficult for the Spartans to build any system of fortifications to establish anything close to rival city. This is difficult enough even in time of peace, but much more difficult in enemy territory, especially when Athens is just as well fortified against them as they are against Athens. While a mere post might be able to do some harm to our countryside by incursions from their raiders and by our deserters, but this will never prevent us from sailing into their country and raising fortifications there, and making reprisals with our powerful fleet. For our naval skill is of more use to us for service on land than their military skill for service at sea. They will not find it easy to master the sea. Even we, who have been practicing since the Persian invasion, have yet to achieve perfection. So is there any chance of anything considerable being achieved by an agricultural, unseafaring population, who will besides be prevented from even practicing seafaring because of the blockade we will keep them under with our fleet? Against a small squadron of our fleet, they might be emboldened by their superior numbers and risk a battle, despite their ignorance. However, being pinned down by the full strength of our naval power will prevent them from moving, and through lack of practice, they will grow more clumsy and consequently more timid. It must be kept in mind that seamanship, just like anything else, is a matter of art. It cannot be taken up occasionally as an occupation for times of leisure. On the contrary, it is so demanding as to leave leisure for nothing else. Even if they were to steal the money from Olympia or Delphi and try to seduce our foreign sailors by the temptation of higher pay, that would only be a serious danger if we could not still be a match for them by embarking our own citizens and foreigners resident among us. But in fact, we can always be a match for them in this way. And best of all, we have a larger and higher class of native sailors among our own citizens than all the rest of Greece combined. None of our foreign sailors would risk being exiled from their own country and taking service with the Spartans and their hopeless cause for the sake of a few days' high pay. This, I think, is a reasonably fair account of the position of the Spartans and their allies. But our situation is free from the defects that I have criticized in them, and has other advantages of its own, which the Spartans cannot match. If they march against our country, we will sail against theirs, and it will be found that the desolation of the whole of Attica cannot be compared with even a fraction of the Peloponnese, for they will not be able to replace it except by conquest, while we have plenty of land both on the islands and the continent. The rule of the sea is indeed of central importance. Consider for a moment that we were islanders. Can you conceive a more impregnable position? Well, this, in the future, should as far as possible be our understanding of our position. Let go of all thought of our land and houses. We must vigilantly guard the sea and the city. We must let no irritation that we may feel for the loss of our land and houses provoke us into a battle with the numerical superiority of the Spartans. Even a victory would only lead to another battle against the same superiority, but a defeat involves the loss of our allies too. Our allies are the source of our strength, and they will not remain quiet after we become unable to march against them. We must not despair over the loss of our land and houses, but over the loss of men's lives. It is men who give us these assets, but our assets give us no men. And if I thought that I could persuade you, I would have asked you to go out and lay waste to your possessions yourselves, just to show the Spartans that you will never submit to save your property. I have many other reasons to hope for a favorable result against the Spartans. Only if you can agree not to combine the conduct of this war with new conquests, and abstain from willfully involving yourselves in other dangers. Indeed, I am more afraid of our own blunders than of the enemy's devices. But these matters shall be explained in another speech, as events necessitate. But for the present, dismiss these messengers with the following answer. First, we will allow Megara to use our markets and harbors, when the Spartans suspend their expulsion of us and our allies from theirs. Secondly, that we recognize the independence of the Greek cities if they were independent when we signed the treaty, and only if Sparta likewise grants to its own cities an independence that does not force them to serve Spartan interests, but allows them to be governed as they each separately may desire. Thirdly, that we are willing to accept arbitration as our agreements specify, and that we shall not commence hostilities, but shall resist those who do. This is an answer agreeable to the rights and the dignity of Athens. It must be thoroughly understood that war is now inevitable, but that the more readily we accept it, the less will be the eagerness of our opponents. And remember, it is out of the greatest dangers that both societies and individuals earn their greatest glory. Did our fathers not resist the Persians with resources far different from ours? And even when those resources had been abandoned, did they not resist more by wisdom than by fortune, more by daring than by strength, and so beat off the barbarians and advanced Athens to her present height? We must not fall short of their example. We must resist our enemies in any way and in every way possible, and make sure that we hand down our power to our posterity undiminished.